moments like this in Washington, the two parties in harmony delivering $140 billion in tax cuts to a wide range of Americans. In Colorado, a terrifying flood comes out of the night and rages through Fort Collins, killing at least 5. And Bill Cosby volunteers to take a paternity test. In depth tonight, the growing business of determining parenthood through blood testing.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. Everyone in Washington is claiming victory tonight. The president, the vice president, the Republican leaders of Congress. Victory for the American people. And for a change, most of the claims are true. The new budget deal gives tax breaks, in some cases substantial tax breaks, to a wide range of Americans. We'll tell you who's helped the most and take you through some of the options you may be considering. But let's begin tonight at the White House and NBC's Claire Shipman. Claire?
Tom, it's been 2.5 years of often bitter partisan bickering over the budget, but no echo of that today. This is a deal most everyone likes and one with many parents. There was celebrating and credit-taking at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue today for a deal which its crafters say will accomplish a feat not seen in 30 years.
After decades of deficits, we have put America's fiscal house in order again.
We have come to an agreement that will lead us to less Washington spending, to tax relief for working Americans, to security for our senior citizens.
In terms of political priorities, the deal does offer substantial victories for both sides. For the White House, a $500 per child tax break that extends to the working poor. Education tax breaks that give a $1,500 credit for the first 2 years of college, and $24 billion toward child health care for the uninsured. And for the Republicans, that $500 per child tax break extended to families making up to $110,000 a year. A substantial capital gains tax cut to 20% at the highest level, 8% at the lowest, and a state tax relief and an expansion of individual retirement accounts. For both sides, the deal is a welcome image booster. The president taking what he hopes is a significant stride toward the history books. The Republicans, surrounded by Boy Scouts and young children, putting behind them, they hope, a bruising few weeks of infighting. But some conservative Republicans are still grumbling that the tax relief isn't enough. And some liberal Democrats, like House Minority Leader Richard Gephardt, who's staking out political territory for the year 2000, complain that the tax cuts are skewed to the rich. But the deal is expected to pass by a wide margin later this week. And probably the biggest player in all of this, the booming economy, which increased the pie enough to make the whole process relatively painless for all involved. Tom?
Thanks, Claire. In the euphoria over this deal, it is important to remember that the toughest issue in the federal budget still was not wholly addressed in a way that resolves the problem. The issue, of course, is Medicare, the health care program for seniors growing at a rate that cannot be sustained. Something has to be done, everyone agrees. NBC's David Bloom tonight on the tough choices ahead for the president. David?
Tom, despite the president's claim today that both Republicans and Democrats, quote, seize the high ground, the real work, the hardest work, has yet to be done. Even with a strong economy and today's balanced budget deal, the Congressional Budget Office estimates the deficit will again explode to more than $400 billion by the year 2010. Why? Because with millions of baby boomers nearing retirement, Medicare will still be broke in 10 years and Social Security bankrupt by 2035. Today, House Speaker Newt Gingrich, surrounded by older Americans, insisted that $115 billion in Medicare savings is a start.
We knew that the most we could do in one jump was save Medicare for a decade. Now, I think, frankly, that's a lot.
Top White House officials tell NBC News that a plan to charge wealthier Americans higher Medicare premiums will likely be included in next year's budget. But a bipartisan Medicare commission won't come back with far-reaching recommendations until the spring of 1999.
The longer you wait, the harder the solution is. And there, as I said, there are not very many solutions here.
But many administration officials are convinced Congress will not tackle both Medicare and Social Security at the same time and expect the president to focus on Social Security reform before the year is out.
The president also plans to take on Social Security. He has been very candid that we have solved the short-term problems. We have not solved the generational problems.
Senior citizens' lobbies have been accused of blocking reform. But today, the most powerful lobbyist for seniors said that while the president and Congress should be congratulated,
more important is that we begin right now to address the longer-term problems of Medicare and of Social Security to be sure that they are here in whatever form the American people want.
the White House position is that having wrapped up a budget deal, the prospects for long-term retirement reform are now greater. In part, the White House official said, because now no one will say we're trying to cut Medicare or Social Security to pay for tax cuts. Tom?
David, standing at the president's side today was Vice President Al Gore, who has his eye firmly fixed, of course, in the year 2000. What's he telling the president about Medicare reform?
Well, what the vice president's advisors are telling us, he's saying, is that you should do it sooner rather than later, in part because it's the right thing to do, in part, of course, because if you get it out of the way, it's not a hurdle to overcome in the year 2000.
At the same time, legal immigrants who thought they were going to be denied health benefits now have had those reinstated. Who was the victor there, David?
Well, that was certainly the White House pushing that. You're talking about the immigration bill, the welfare reform bill that was passed last year that denied legal immigrants many of those benefits. The White House insisted that they be reinstated, and in this budget deal, they were.
All right, thanks very much. David Bloom tonight at the White House. Still ahead, NBC News in depth tonight. The Cosby case puts the spotlight on proving who's the dad.
There are hundreds of thousands of paternity petitions that are filed in the United States every year.
Proving a real father, not just celebrities on the spot these days. And a Colorado town hit by a flash flood the size of a tidal wave. The people of Fort Collins, Colorado tonight still are recovering from the flood that burst through their town in the middle of the night. It was sudden, it was shocking, and it was deadly. Here's NBC's Roger O'Neill.
Even though the floodwaters had receded by morning, the search for bodies was just beginning. 5 had been found, 30 more were still missing. It was just past midnight. There had been 5 hours of heavy rain in Fort Collins, and worse just above the town in the mountains, 8 inches of rain in all. A deadly combination which produced a wall of water 20 feet high, roaring down Spring Creek, normally just ankle deep, and 2 mobile home parks were in the way.
Those trailers flown by us. They were flown by us at a high rate of speed, you know.
A gas main ruptured and a trailer caught fire.
All of a sudden it just boom.
A woman was pulled out of a window. Rescuers then swam her to higher ground.
Okay, we need a medic this side. Let's go.
For 3 hours there was chaos.
It's pretty frightening. I'd never been anything like that before.
Every mobile home in the path of the floodwaters, 90 in all, was damaged. Many were washed away. It was a big thunderstorm which, after forming, did not move, dumping torrential rain in the town of 90,000 for 5 straight hours.
The storm over Fort Collins was remarkably similar to another tragedy almost 21 years ago to the day, the flood in the Big Thompson Canyon.
10 inches of rain fell then, a dam broke, and when the counting stopped, 145 people were dead. This morning, the governor flew over Fort Collins. Then Roy Romer rolled up his pants and walked through the mud and debris. The library and student union at Colorado State University was heavily damaged. Water 4 feet deep flowed through the buildings. Jeff Stevenson saw a little girl trying to save a dog swept away by the floodwaters.
And it was just rushing down the street at that point. It was pulling cars out of the driveway, coming through the houses.
While more storms were forming in the mountains this afternoon, most of the missing have now been accounted for, safe but homeless. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Fort Collins.
In Southern Virginia today, a charter bus full of children on a field trip to learn about slavery. The bus ran off the road and into a river, killing one of the adult chaperones on board, injuring 34 others. The man killed has been identified as the adopted grandson of civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks. No word yet on why the bus crashed. Up next, NBC News in depth tonight, Bill Cosby agrees to take a test that hundreds of thousands of American men take every year. A paternity test. But first, from CNBC, let's take a look at what happened on Wall Street today. Another record for the Dow. NBC News in depth tonight, a question of bloodlines. Who's the father? It's been in the spotlight recently with one of this country's most beloved actors, Bill Cosby, involved in an extortion battle with a young woman who claimed to be his daughter. But as NBC's Pat Dawson tells us in depth tonight, celebrities aren't the only ones grappling with the question of paternity.
It was the case that opened Bill Cosby's private life to public view and raised the question, is America's TV father also the father of this woman? 3 days after a jury found he'd been blackmailed by Autumn Jackson, Cosby reversed the position he held before and during the trial that he would not take a DNA paternity test. Last night, the TV star's lawyer fired back in a very public way in a primetime interview on CNBC.
Mr. Cosby is having blood drawn for a DNA test right now. What it will do is establish paternity, and he certainly expects, as I do, that it will demonstrate conclusively that he is not the father.
Cosby is only the latest celebrity caught in the paternity spotlight. Others include NBA star Scottie Pippen, first brother Roger Clinton, and singer Tom Jones. But frequently, money is less the issue for celebrities than protecting their public image. Dan Cloris, who manages public relations crises, watched the Cosby trial closely.
He's not going to pay a big price for this publicly. And he's probably made up his mind that even if he does pay a temporary price, so what?
While the celebrity factor makes the Cosby case unusual, it's emblematic of a problem that touches the lives of millions of Americans. The simple question, who's my daddy, can often be very hard to answer. In 1995, more than 1.2 million children were born out of wedlock, and there are now an estimated 750,000 paternity cases across the country. A question about paternity for one of every 100 children in America. One attorney who specializes in family issues says there's no way to know how much a missing dad costs children, emotionally and financially.
It may be many years before a mother or the child actually files a paternity proceeding, and during that interim period, support in most cases is not being paid.
In fact, across America, an estimated 80% of support payments go uncollected. But paternity, the issue that was once spoken about only in whispers, is now big business, plastered on California billboards and taxis in New York. A DNA test is only a toll-free call away. In the Cosby case, the TV star has already done his test, but the lawyer representing Autumn Jackson's mother claims she won't take a test, leaving the issue of who's the father in this case still unresolved. Pat Dawson, NBC News, New York.
One footnote on that phone-in paternity test, the 800 number is getting 250 calls a day requesting the service. The service costs $600 to run a blood test on the mother, the child, and the alleged father. The results come back, we're told, in about 1 week. Just ahead tonight, the money trail. Does the FBI have the goods on an old Clinton friend from Arkansas, Charlie Tree? And later, retiring ever younger. Why are these 30-somethings turning their backs on promising careers? The man who led a long and successful bid to bring the 2002 Winter Olympics to Utah has quit as head of the Salt Lake Olympic Committee. Tom Welsh had been sharply criticized after being charged with abusing his wife. Today, he called those charges unfounded, but he said the publicity made it impossible for him to continue in that job. On the money trail tonight, they're calling it a slam dunk. Testimony by an FBI agent that described in great detail illegal contributions made by one of the key figures in the campaign fundraising scandal. He's an old friend of Bill Clinton's. He's alleged to have stuffed Democratic coffers with foreign money. More now from NBC's Lisa Myers.
The man in the spotlight today, the president's friend Charlie Tree, was 7,000 miles away, hiding somewhere in China. One of the mysteries of the money trail is how Tree, who owned a modest restaurant in Little Rock, could give $220,000 to the Democratic Party. Tree told Tom Brokaw, who tracked him down in China, that it was all his own money. But today an FBI agent told a Senate committee that Tree did not earn that much money, that the contributions actually came from overseas.
In your opinion, did Mr. Tree launder money?
Yes, sir, in my opinion, he did.
Investigators say Tree's money actually came from the tiny colony of Macau near Hong Kong and from Tree's business partner, Wu Lap Seng. Bank records show that Wu, who has close ties to the Chinese government, wired $905,000 to Tree's accounts in the United States while Tree was making contributions. The FBI agent says an eyewitness also recalls Tree asking Wu for cash.
Mr. Wu opened a suitcase which was described as full of cash and handed Charlie Tree approximately $20,000 in cash.
Today, Tree's lawyer admits that some of Wu's money did go to the Democrats, but says it was not illegal.
It was concluded by both men that it would be in their mutual interest to make a connection with the Democratic Party.
Tree wasn't alone. Today, 2 women testified through an interpreter that they wrote these checks totaling $25,000 to the Democrats, and then Wu's company reimbursed them. That is illegal. Why?
Yeah, the boss wanted to go to the White House.
The boss is Wu, and he did in fact attend a presidential fundraiser at this hotel last year, the same day the checks were written. Today, $250,000 in apparently illegal foreign money was traced back to the mysterious Mr. Wu. Why would he want to give Democrats all that money? Well, one reason, in Asia, even the appearance of a relationship with the President of the United States brings stature. Still unknown tonight is whether any of Wu's money actually came from the Chinese government. Lisa Myers, NBC News, the Capitol.
When we come back, they're young, they're well off, they're making great strides up the corporate ladder, so why are they ready at such a young age to retire? But first, the number of Americans graduating from high school or getting a college degree is at the highest level in more than 50 years. New figures tonight from the Census Bureau show just the facts. Think retirement, and what comes to mind? Silver-haired couples walking the beach, golf every day, the early bird specials. Think again. For retirement these days is not reserved for the 60-something set alone. Young people are making so much money they can afford to bail out while still in their 30s and land in jobs that pay less but are more personally satisfying. Here's NBC's Mike Jensen.
At the age of 30, Andrea Immer already has made a major career shift. Not just a job change, she retired from the high-powered world of investment banking into the gentler world of wine.
You follow your heart into something that you can give a lot of personal, passionate energy to. That's really where you'll succeed the most.
You went to Southern Methodist University, majored in finance.
And economics.
From there, you got a job at what is probably America's best investment banking house, Morgan Stanley.
Yes, and I enjoyed it.
If she had stayed on Wall Street, she probably would have made more than $1 million a year. Why did she give it up?
I didn't want to be sort of measured by dollars and cents. That wasn't appealing to me. Wine tastes better than grapes.
So now she rides the subway and is measured by her knowledge of wine and how well she can convey that knowledge to others.
You know what I smell is I smell Chateau barrels like Major Barrique, Mouton.
Experts say hundreds of thousands of Americans in their 30s are retiring from one career and switching to another, often doing a U-turn.
Sing unto the Lord.
Brent Thompson, who's 39, spent 13 years as a banker, lived the good life, but something was missing.
I spent a good part of my life going through the motions, that I just knew there had to be more to this thing called faith.
So he enrolled at the Denver Seminary, training to be a minister.
As you get into ministry, you can't fake it. You've got to be who you are.
There are a lot of people who have come to realize that climbing the ladder isn't as important as making sure that the ladder is leaning against the right wall.
Brent Thompson knows what he's giving up and what he's gaining.
The income opportunity is maybe a quarter to a third at best of what we were doing. Amen. But there's richness of life and an adventure and a passion that I wasn't able to find in the corporate workplace.
Chardonnay 1995, Sonoma Cundy.
Andrea Immer found that passion in wine. How's she doing in her new career? She was just named the best wine steward in America, Sommelier of the Year.
Blessed be the name of the Lord.
She and Brent Thompson and all the other 30-somethings are the lucky ones. They have an option most of their parents and grandparents did not have. The prosperity of the 90s has given them the chance to follow their hearts instead of their pocketbooks. Mike Jensen, NBC News, New York.
That's nightly news for this Tuesday night. Tonight on Dateline NBC, the Bill Cosby story. Will his blood test settle the question of paternity of Autumn Jackson once and for all? That's Dateline tonight at 10, 9 Central. And a full hour on the Cosby story tonight on Internight on MSNBC at 8 Eastern. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.